Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters. It's ladies' night with me, Steve Wraith, and tonight we've got Kendall, Sav and Samantha. Good evening, girls.
Hiya.
Hello.
We're missing one tonight. Happy birthday to Katie. I'm not sure what she's doing. Does anybody know?
No, she said she was getting kidnapped at 7
Yeah.
o'clock. So.
She said she thought it was Alan Shearer coming to take her away. So
Yeah.
who knows?
She hoped.
Too busy probably selecting his team for his first game in charge under the new ownership of Michael Chopra and the whatever it is, BN consortium. Yeah, we've got to laugh every time you hear BN consortium. Obviously, we're going to be looking ahead to all your questions, guys, and I can see there's lots of questions coming in already. Samantha came up with she's great at trying to get us away from the takeover, which we all fully support. So we're looking tonight for your suggestions for the best and worst buys for Newcastle United. So that's British and abroad. It can be anybody. We did say that it has to exclude Shearer and Solano. We all love them. But, I mean, essentially, you know, give us your best and worst buys for Newcastle United in your time as a supporter. Just ping them in and we'll get through as many of them as possible. I'm sure we'll start, with them quite quickly and we'll be able to talk about them. Peter Robson, evening mate, question for all. If Ashley was to suddenly start funding the team, facilities, a new manager, and really try to push us forward, would we be content and accept them? My answer quite quickly is, at this moment, I would take anything. I'm just sick of the whole takeover thing. Would I take Mike Ashley if he did all of that? Look, it's all about the football club. So I would probably say, if we could have ring fence guarantees, not that you'd ever get them, I would say yes. Kendall, what's your takes on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, just don't know how long it's going to last for. Because, I mean, when Alan Pardew was manager, he did invest in the squad a little bit, didn't he? Like when we signed all them French players. But so ever since then, I mean, it's been pretty dire. So I mean, I'm on the same board as you, Steve. I would, if it's going to invest in the club and we are going to progress and there is going to be some guarantee somewhere that he's going to continue doing that, then yeah, fair enough. But I mean, I'll not forgive him, I'll not forget, but I'll take it. Yeah,
I would agree. I would agree. Samantha, is it the same for you? Would you accept Mike Ashley? If it was some kind of guarantee that he was going to be, supporting Newcastle United and giving it his best shot?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would accept it, but as you said, it's the best thing for the club. There's real broken down trust, and it's been a very long time. The longest time that I can remember in my lifetime, where kind of the enjoyment of being a Newcastle supporter, apart from a few peaks, has been sucked. The life has been sucked out of it. So, I mean, if you get those assurances, why not? If it's investment in the club, investment in the area, it's him trying to welcome supporters back in, and that side, maybe can't see it happening, but if it did happen, you would have to try, because at the end of the day, it's his club. Unless something changes and supporters can get onto the board or in a share in the club, we don't really have much say.
Sav, has Mike Ashley done too much to Newcastle United to warrant an opportunity to maybe stay on? I mean, I personally feel, as Mad Mark's been mentioning there about this agreement that's been signed, I personally feel that Amanda and Mirdad and the Rubens and PIF are working tirelessly behind the scenes to try and come up with some kind of compromise, which the Premier League will go for. But, worst case scenario, all cards off the table, all bids off the table. And we have to settle with Mike. If he started putting stuff back in, money back in and really, really going to town with the football club, could you forgive him?
Would that be some sort of dream world situation, though, where he'd be in that sort of mood? I mean,
well, it could be.
Is that the dream you had, Steve?
Yeah, was that the dream you were referring to?
Well, yeah, I mean, I did talk about it before we came on air. I had a dream about Mike Ashley the other night. We were both fully clothed. There was nothing going on. It was literally just woke up in a cold sweat and went to the toilet. But I mean, it is bizarre, isn't it? I mean, I think we're all probably going through some kind of takeover.
We're clutching at straws when we're talking about if Mike Ashley started putting money into the club and caring about it.
This is what I've done to us. Look what I've done to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, Sav. I think I just hope and pray that we can get this through. And obviously the thoughts of Mike Ashley staying on, I think would terrify like most supporters. But we all just want what's good for the club. I think he's had his day, and it's I can't see that happening. I do personally feel that we'll move on, and I do think we'll have new owners. Mad Mark says, "Me and Dad thought it was necessary to bring to fans' attention at the start of the month. It's still an issue for the Premier League. KSA continue to make it a priority, tackling piracy for Vision 2030. Yeah, there was a post on his social media, on his Twitter, of something with regards to that. So a lot of people feeling that's a big thing. Evening, Steve, Kendall, Sav, Katie, and Samantha. Well, Katie's not. Yeah, I would just like to say I hate the Premier League for how they butchered our takeover and how they've gone into hiding. Well, of course, the NUFC Supporters Trust have one of their quarterly meetings this week on Wednesday. They will be in front of Richard Masters with about 6 other clubs, I think, Sav, and it'll be interesting to see what questions are actually allowed and what questions they answer. I see there's been a lot of backwards and forwards on Twitter about this. A lot of people maybe putting suggestions in for questions. Do you think Richard Masters is going to give them much chance to speak? Do you think, and what points would you like to see the trust put over on Wednesday, Sav?
I mean, no, to be fair, I think the statement that came out was a load of wild waffle, really. Didn't really make masses of sense. And I think if he's asked, to comment too far, he's not going to say anything, is he? They don't answer any of our questions.
Yeah, I mean, they don't. I mean, and of course, this is other Premier League teams as well. I think at the last count, I saw six teams mentioned who'd confirmed attendance, and of course, fair play to the trust have got this onto the agenda, Samantha. But what would you like to see the trust use this opportunity to gain from the Premier League?
I think it's great that they have a presence there, first and foremost. It would be interesting to understand who the other 6 clubs are. They put out some questions, which I think are fine. And I know that there was a lot of conversation on Twitter about other questions that should be asked. But we have to be mindful that it's not an open audience with the Premier League. We can't have, 20 questions. And also we need to be realistic about what information will actually come out of that process. So the only question additionally that I had thought of was the fact that, when they had come to this impasse in the deal and they said that they would potentially have to get a third party, someone separate from the deal involved. Apparently that was only offered on the last day of the exclusivity, however you say it, that part of the deal. So, I mean, that's very late in the day to offer something that I didn't feel had a particular place in it. I don't know if they'll answer that or not, but definitely around the timelines, definitely around leaked communication, because it is clear as night and day, that there is communication that has come out in newspaper articles beforehand. And I don't know how the Premier League can say that that's not the case when word for word there are parts of communication that are in print before they've been made available. So maybe questions around those, but like Sav said, I don't really think that much will come out of it, but it's good that they have the opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree. Kendall, same question to you. I mean, what would you like to see the trust, communicate to the Premier League, and do you think they'll get any answers?
Well, I think obviously they'll probably say there'll be a briefing beforehand. They'll say you're not allowed to take up the whole night with takeover questions. Obviously, I know they'll probably say that because they don't want to say too much in it, as we saw in the letter. I think when I was reading it, the only thing that wasn't, I mean, a lot of it wasn't directly answered. It was sort of roundabout, trying to get the blame off them. But I think the only thing that wasn't answered at all was what influence the clubs that objected to the takeover had on the actual decisions that were made. There was not really, all it said was that the clubs don't, like the member clubs don't have any influence over the owners and directors test. But that was it. They didn't sort of say what it was taken into account. Obviously, as we know, a couple of the top clubs had objected to the takeover. So I would like to see that be asked. and maybe I don't think they'll answer it, to be honest, because they'll probably say that they're not allowed, but or they'll say, you know, they don't have any influence over such and such, as they did in the letter. But yeah, I think they'll say, right, the spotlight's not being on that, we've released a statement, don't, you know, delve into it any further. So yeah, but most of the time it's just about getting the blame off them and not really taking any accountability, which is what we've seen the whole time.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's, you know, look, as I've said right at the top of the program there, I think it's commendable that they managed to get it onto the agenda. You know, at least we know that they're not going to be, you know, completely running away from it. Do I expect to get any answers from this of any significance? No, I don't. And, you know, ultimately, I think it's just another talking shop, and very little answers will be given by the Premier League. And essentially all we want is answers, and we want to see this go through. But as I've said, I do feel, you know, in the conversations I've had over the last few days, that we will certainly see, you know, something happen. Whether it's positive or negative remains to be seen. So, of course, over the last few days, we've been hit with a second wave of stories and articles. Liam Kennedy from the Gazette broke a story about Michael Chopra, essentially, who was heading a new consortium, or certainly attempting to facilitate the deal by a new consortium, which is the Lowe brothers. So soon as that happened, as soon as that news broke, everyone was suddenly Googling who these people were. A lot of photos did then come out of the Lowe brothers with Barack Obama, and a little bit of Google search obviously brings up these photographs, which is quite clearly at a meet and greet, the kind of thing that I do when I put events on in Newcastle. And the interesting thing about this photograph, of course, and Obama in that potential photograph, is that there was also a photo there of you know, Obama, and then we have this one, and as we can see, it has quite clearly been a little bit of transference from one photo to another, a bit of Photoshop, and it appears that they're guilty of at least photoshopping that photograph and making it appear that it was somewhere that it wasn't. Now, Sav, what's your gut instinct about the Chopra-led consortium? They've apparently put a bid in. We know it's quite clearly a lot less than the Amanda Staveley and PIF and PCP have put in. We're led to believe these people have a lot of money to spend. The reason they would put a low bid in, of course, is because they can. I mean, Mike Ashley's done a deal with PIF, but is the football club really worth the same amount of money that they bid for in January, when we've been hit with COVID? We've got no crowds coming back to St James's Park for the foreseeable. I don't know. What's your take on the whole thing?
You know, I've just found it massively entertaining the last couple of days. And those pictures, I mean, I had a good bit of a Google round, and I couldn't find anything prior to June about them. And, you know, their photos, they look like cartoon characters. And it just all seems a bit weird and a little bit suspicious to me, to be fair. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've had a Google. I found one of them on LinkedIn or whatever it's called. I found her on there, but it was just a pretty bog standard, you know. It's so much has suddenly come out in the last sort of couple of weeks about them, and we've never heard about them before.
What did you find on LinkedIn, just out of interest? I saw somebody commenting on that. Is it just like a personal account? Is there much on there?
Half of it was Chinese, but there was sort of like her previous where she'd worked and things like that, but nothing of any extensive. You know, it could have just been set up just to look like, and I mean, I don't even know.
I think the comical thing, Samantha, is that it's obviously BN, and of course we're all now so used to saying BN, but we're thinking about BN Sports. Is that a coincidence?
Who knows? I mean, you know, the same as Sav. I'm off work, and the weather's horrendous here. So this morning, when all these stories were coming out, I spent a lot of time kind of Googling and interacting with people on Twitter, having a joke. And, you know, I can kind of connect the dots up to the point where the group is formed, you know, because it was her businesses, their project that came together in June. So, you know, I can connect the dots. Why they would buy a football club at this point, I just can't get my head around, for a newly formed entity with what they do. Could it be for publicity? Yes. I don't know why. The fact that there is some evidence of, you know, the statement of intent and the finances, you know, I wouldn't profess to know anything about those, but they're there. Could it be something with somebody pulling the strings in the background from any of those parties? Maybe. I mean, I just think it's something that's come out of the blue. I can't see a reason for it. If it happened, amazing, depending on what the project is. But yeah, it just, as the girls have said, it's so strange how it's come about, and the fact that it's publicity drawn from the start. Yeah, it's just odd.
Does that set the alarm bells ringing when they go for publicity straight away, before literally as the ink's just dried, you know, on the offer, Kendall?
Yeah, I think as we've already learned from the past 5 takeover attempts, the fact that it's gone public straight away before, you know, a formal bid was made and stuff isn't good news. It's meant to be confidential, as we all are aware of by this point. So yeah, I think it probably is a move for publicity. It probably also is in terms of publicity for them. If they are genuinely serious about buying the club, obviously it's to, you know, make the fans aware that they're serious about it, to try and get on board with the bid instead of being negative. Because I know I have seen in the past few days, like, a lot of the fans are like, don't want to believe. I mean, I'm one of them as well. Don't want to believe in it. A lot of fans, I mean, even some of the comments have said they still believe that the Reuben brothers, Amanda Staveley, etc., are in the background trying to work on the deal still. So whether or not it is for publicity for them, I don't know. I think it probably works both ways, and it is just like, it's like a parody at this point. being like the doctored Photoshop, like, Howie, man, I could have done that. It's like one of them really rubbish Instagram filters where you just like face swap. Like, it's just, I don't even know why you do that. And as Sam says, obviously you can't. There's not a lot of information prior to like mid this year. I mean, even the Twitter account was only started in August. Obviously, whether or not, I haven't really delved too much into it, but whether or not the whole joint venture is very brand new. But again, why would your first thought then to be go to buy a football club when Evangeline Shen, who's obviously the female part of the deal, she owned a jewelry company? Like, yeah, I mean, it doesn't all match up. But as we know now, Sky Sports have obviously came out and said that there's genuine documents in place. There's been £250,000 deposit to access the data, and obviously a formal £280 million bid. So, I mean, it's £70 million less than the very original price that obviously Mike Ashley wanted. I know he accepted 300 from the consortium PIF. So it's just, I think it all depends now on how genuinely willing he is to sell. But as I've seen today, I don't think he's too keen on this BN group.
No, I genuinely can't see, you know, at this moment in time, there's only one deal on the table. A lot of people asking, is the deal still ongoing? Is it still there? Yes, it is. Yeah. I mean, you just need to look at the social media of Mirdad. You know, Gudusi, he's certainly still, you know, putting out various things. Some people found it quite amusing that he put out, Rick Astley, never going to give you up. I certainly did. But I just genuinely feel that they still feel they're at the table. And Mike Ashley won't want to sell for a penny under what he's already agreed, despite banking £17 million in, you know, in an advanced fee. I found it quite strange as well that, you know, he was prepared to accept £250,000 for accessing the data room. I presume that's probably non-refundable, as was the £17 million. I mean, Mike Ashley could string this along for a while, you know, making a lot of money out of just taking money off people to have a look in the data room. And it was quite funny watching all the pictures go up on Twitter of empty rooms with just computers in and things yesterday. We're having a lot of response to Sam's best and worst buys. We should have excluded Joe Linton, Mr. Carter. You're definitely right, Jason, because he's getting a load of votes, Joe Linton, and I'm always conscious of the fact whenever we mention him, it turns into a bit of a sideshow to the shows. But yeah, Billy Whitehurst's been chucked in there as a potential worst buy. There's a few votes for Frank Pingle, Bobby Shinton. As for best buys, we've had Nobby Solano, of course, Rob Lee, Gary Speed, Alan Shearer is coming out heads and tails above. Peter Beardsley, second time round. as well is a good shout. So a lot of people also feel that that there's been a couple of recent signings who've really stood out. Johan Kabay and Martin Dubravka as well, of course, who is still Newcastle United's goalkeeper. So yeah, keep those coming in. Best and worst signings, that will be great, and we will read as many of those out as possible. Talking of Alan Shearer, Sav, he's been mentioned as a potential manager under BN. Now, again, putting your skeptical hat on, Alan Shearer, of course, very rarely comes out and talks on anything to do with takeovers. He's, he's contracted to the BBC and Match of the Day. He's not allowed to be too political. Obviously, no comment from Alan. Would you have Alan back in the dugout as a manager to give it a second crack?
No, no, I just don't think that's for him, to be honest. I noticed actually his son Will had liked something on Twitter about that being a rumour, but whether or not he just liked that because it was a laugh or whether he was being serious, I don't know. But no, I just couldn't see him doing it.
Yeah, Alan Shearer, Sam, what's your take on that? Would you take Alan Shearer back in the dugout? I personally prefer him back on the pitch.
I love Alan. I mean, I would love him back involved in the club. I don't think he had a decent shot the first time around, but I just don't get the sense of him being a manager. I don't see those qualities. I think he has a lot of qualities, and I think he's got a good thing with Match of the Day. So I don't see him being a manager, but I would love at some point someone that takes over the club to welcome him back with open arms, because I just think it's an absolute travesty. He is in no way really associated with the club. So hopefully there's something in the future, but I just don't see him as a manager.
Yeah, Mad Mark says best signing for him was Andy Cole, worst CM De Jong. Could you believe that Luke De Jong actually knocked Man United out of the cup last night, by the way? He knocked them out the semi-finals. It's just a collective groan on social media last night when they saw him get the winner in the semi-final. Unbelievable.
It's always us that gets players that end up being unreal elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like remember Torvan? He was the worst crack ever. We were like, oh my god, what has Steve McLaren done? I can't believe this. And then now he's in the France squad. It's why is it us? Why is it us? Joe Linton will go to Man United and score 50 a season, probably.
That's probably, yeah. I mean, that might be taking it too far, but you never know. You never know. And John Dahl Thomason won the Champions League. He got chucked in when Shearer got his horrendous injury down at Everton, and he looked awful. There was a player there, but he just never scored goals. He was just unfortunate. Possibly goes on and wins the Champions League. You just never know. You never know what's going to happen in football. What about you then, Kendall? What's your takes on Alan Shearer? Would you like to see him back in the dugout, suited and booted, picking the team?
Well, as you know, he didn't inherit the squad in the best form. We were practically relegated anyway the last time he had a goal. So, I mean, he didn't have the best goal the first time around. But as everyone else has said, I really don't think that it's for him. I know he said in the past that, he wouldn't actually give up. He's presenting, ventures to go back into management. He said that on a couple of occasions. So clearly he's not interested in being a manager, and that's fine. I don't mind that at all. But as Sam said, and obviously we had the conversation about Kevin Keegan the other week, I would like to see him as an ambassador or as something within the club, to have a bit of say, to do some publicity for us and to show that, he is still connected to us, because obviously now he can't have too much to say about it. But I would like to see him in some capacity, just probably not as a manager.
Yeah, I agree. Sav, let's go back to Samantha's question about best and worst signings. Give us yours. Plenty of them coming in tonight.
Well, actually, I just thought my worst one, Michael Owen. I think he was so bitter. And still to this day, you see the odd article come out where he's whinging. And I just think, he didn't deserve the shirt. He didn't want the shirt on. So he would be the worst for me. Best, obviously, you've got Alan Shearer and Solano. Dubravka and Shah, I think visually is very pleasing to watch.
How did you know you were going to say him?
Any dreams about Shah this week?
None. I'm gutted. I keep trying. I keep going to bed looking at his photo. Nothing.
I'll send you Mike Ashley. Don't worry.
Oh no.
Samantha, what about you? Your great idea for tonight. So give us your best and worst.
I really struggled with this. Like, it was brilliant kind of thinking about all the players over the years and the categories. And some of the categories I cannot just limit it to one because some of them have been absolutely horrendous. So in terms of best of British, I went for Gary Speed and Peter Beardsley because I just adored Gary Speed. I thought he was absolutely fantastic player. And Peter Beardsley's second spell, as someone had said before, twinkle toes. I mean, I was quite young. So whenever I was watching him in that second spell, I just couldn't believe that the control he had with the ball. My worst signings, Michael only talked about, but also Alan Smith was the biggest waste of money for such a long time. And the fact that I think he left us and went to Notts County and then MK Dons, we paid him 60 grand a week for a very long time. And it was just, that the injury at Man United wrecked him. And then he just became someone that wanted to break legs on the pitch and wasn't very good at it. In terms of kind of the players from abroad, I have 3 for my best because I struggled. Shay Given, Johan Cabaye, Laurent Robert. All fantastic. Shay Given was just, I know we talk a lot about Dubravka at the minute. Shay Given was outstanding. And I mean, we kind of broke him to the point where he had to leave, when I think Liverpool beat us, 5-1 at the time or 5-0. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for him in terms of the direction of the club. Johan Cabaye, I absolutely adored and was again heartbroken when he became a bit of a mercenary. And Laurent Robert, his left foot was just absolutely sublime. The worst, I have 4.
Wow.
Because I couldn't choose. So I've got Damien Duff, and not just for the relegation because he wasn't great. Cisco, don't think we need to say much about that. Why we signed him, just beyond me. Albert Luque, that someone mentioned, 9.5 million, did nothing. And Marcelino, I mean, the guy broke a finger and didn't play for, the guts of 18 months or something. So it was really good fun kind of thinking back on the players that we've had. And, we've had some absolute stinkers, but we've had some absolutely fantastic players. And hopefully, maybe the current crop, there's 1 or 2. But hopefully in the future, we'll get back to maybe having 1 or 2 more. But I really, really enjoyed kind of going through that.
Yeah, I can tell you went in depth as well. Probably took a couple of mine as well, who I would put forward. Kendall, same question to you. Then your best and worst home and abroad players that we've signed.
I have a list, my list's long, especially for the worst abroad. I've got about 7 or 8. There's so many to pick from, but British best ones. Obviously, I put Shelby, Ferdinand, obviously. Great player, and then I put Milner as well, but only because of what Milner's become now. So I feel like maybe we had a part to play in that, probably is not, but that was just my opinion. And then I obviously had Michael Owen down as worst for British, and Sol Campbell as well.
Campbell, what a good shout that is, by the way.
Fail, and also I had Louis Saha because he sort of did nothing. He had 11 appearances and did nothing at all. Best for abroad, I had Ben Arthur because Ben Arthur's probably my favourite player that we've ever had, even though we didn't have him for that long. Ginola, Cabaye, and then obviously I put St. Maximin for now because of just what the past season's done, but obviously that's only very new, so you can't really say much. Put Demba Ba, Papa Cisse, because of just their partnership. I mean, at first didn't go too well, but then they scored so many goals between them for us. And Rondon as well, just for, sentimental value and what he did for us at the time when the club was in dire straits. So, worst, obviously Joe Linton's on there. Chef Kikuki. What are you doing now? Facundo Ferreira. What's he doing now? I put De Jong's ×2 because I had them both. What did they do? Nothing. Cisco. I also had Matt Sells as well because
he was terrible.
Butterfingers. Poor Matt Sells. Always felt a bit sorry for him. And Cyvet as well because we've still got him. And yeah, what is he doing? Like what? I haven't seen him play for I literally don't know how long, and he's still there. Like he's got some like soul tie to the club or something. I don't even know.
Oh, is that your end of your list then?
That's just about, yeah. But I could probably go on forever about that, but yeah, just about.
Well, good. I've just gone through my list. And I'm taking a couple out because obviously they've been mentioned by a few people. So, I mean, from my perspective, and I've been a little bit loose when you say foreign. But I've added Ian Rush into my list because he's Welsh. I thought he was horrendous. He scored 1 goal in a quarter final at the FA Cup, but we didn't see the best of Ian Rush at all. He was awful. John Allen Boomsong. Another one who, you know, was woeful in a black and white shirt. And Mark Viduka, absolute mercenary, came at the same time as somebody who was on the English list, Michael Owen, of course. So both in the relegation side that year, both absolutely awful. Other names that came up for me as worst players, Mike Hooper. As a goalkeeper,
Mike Hooper was my dad's housemate for literally 15 years.
I mean, the best thing I saw him do was working on the door down at the Red Line in Chester Street. He did that okay. But as for a goalkeeper, absolutely awful. I also stuck Lionel Perez in there, who people will remember mainly as a Sunderland player, but he did come to Newcastle, of course, and have the odd game. John Carrelsey probably gets a mention as a goalkeeper as well. Mark Stimson, going back a little bit further. Mark had this horrendous habit of just picking the ball up at fullback and passing this crossfield ball to nobody. I've also added Kevin Dillon. Now, Kevin played well. I've just put that in from a purely spiteful point of view because for every game he played, I put £1 on him to be first goal scorer. And of course, if you check the record books, he never actually scored for Newcastle. He then signs for Reading and scores on his debut. So I'm just putting him in just for the sake that he cost us a fortune. And then had the absolute nightmare of doing that, like when he started playing for Reading, that really upset us. Best players, of course, like most people have mentioned, Alan Shearer. He's always going to be on your list. Celez, Gary Speed, and of course the best pound for pound ones had to be Beardsley. Both times, Beardsley in 83, of course, helped us get promotion, and then of course Beardsley in the 90s established us as one of the top Premier League sides on our return. So, you know, easy to pick those. Rob Lee, easily the best pound per pound sign, and everybody says it. Brian Kilcline, another one who you would mention because of what he did in the season to keep us up, and then subsequently getting us promoted. And then from foreign imports, they've all been mentioned. You know, the ones that I've watched, like Robert, like Ginola, like Tino. And I have to say, in recent times, I would agree with Demba Ba and Johan Kabay, especially in teams where they probably weren't expected to do well, and they actually did. So yeah, hey, great players. Keep them coming. I'm sure we'll get more from from people watching. There's been some absolutely brilliant suggestions. Tom Dixon, he says we won't hear from Richard Masters till the Premier League starts again. Plus, I'll be surprised if he comes out and talks about Newcastle. Thanks for that, Tom. Mark says, have you seen the Man City Fly in the Wall documentary? Wow, it just shows how far behind we are with our facilities. Desperate for investment in the club, neglected for far too long. Now, I haven't seen this documentary. Have you seen it, Sab? Have you watched any football kind of documentaries? Do you enjoy watching them? Of course, I've watched the Sunderland soap opera, but I've never seen the Man City programme.
I haven't seen the Man City one. I watched the Sunderland one. That was a brilliant comedy. But no, I haven't seen that one at all. But I can only imagine, because just looking at the state of our training ground, you can imagine we're head and shoulders behind everyone else.
Yeah, I agree. Have you watched any, Samantha? Are you in for watching these kind of documentaries? I do enjoy the Fly on the Wall thing, and I mean, I did enjoy the Sunderland one, I've got to be honest.
Yeah, I loved the Sunderland one. I felt a bit sorry for the kind of people, but Very interesting the way that you can kind of run a club into the ground. I watched a little bit of the Man City one. I find it a little bit indulgent, to be honest, although their facilities are fantastic. But, you know, without sounding bitter, would they get through an owners and directors test now like they did in 2008? And, you know, I actually listened to a podcast on The Guardian kind of about their ownership structure and how they changed it just after we got the deal in 2008. So, I mean, they've pumped, I think, $1 billion into the club. So, yeah, we've got paddling pools in our training ground. But I do enjoy them, and I'm really looking forward to watching the Spurs one that comes out on Amazon at the end of the month, because my brother's a Spurs fan, and I think it starts with Pochettino getting sacked and Jose coming in. So I do enjoy them. It's very interesting the way they're edited, and it gives you that insight on what other clubs have, and then you kind of look at what we have and pray for a takeover.
Yeah, exactly. Kendall, do you watch these programs? Do you get a chance to watch them?
Yeah, well, I don't get too much of a chance, but I've just started watching the Anelka one as well, Misunderstood.
Saw it.
Yeah, I seen a bit of the Man City one. And yeah, we still haven't cold baths in bins. So what do we really expect? Like, I can go and have a cold bath in my backyard, like in the bin. Not that I would, but I could. So like that just shows how far behind we are. Like, as Sam says, we've still got paddling pools, and if you look at the training ground, it's had no sort of input and investment in absolutely years. We're like a million miles behind anything, especially for a Premier League club. I mean, I would even dare to suggest that some of the even newly promoted clubs and championship sides maybe have better facilities than we do. Obviously not all of them, but the ones who are more at the top, I wouldn't be surprised. And that's one of the things that I remember I was so gutted about when we let Rafa go, because he wanted to invest in the infrastructure of the club, in the academy, in the training facilities. I think there was like rumours that, you know, like the training ground to be expanded was knocked back and things like that. And that's just what infuriates me, because obviously he's another year where we've had no investment in that side of the club. So that's why everyone got so excited over the takeover, because they wanted to invest in the club, they wanted to invest in the area. So yeah, it's just a bit down really.
Hatton Ben Arfa, Andrew Davis mentions, was his best player. Worst was Dumbia. Do you remember him? Dear me, how he looked about 70. God, it was a strange signing as well. Was that a last-minute signing in the transfer window or something? And everyone was going, "Who on earth is that?"
That's when we were supposed to buy the guy from West Brom. What was his name? Sadio Berahino.
Yeah, it went on for ages, didn't it?
Yeah, and then we didn't get him, and we got that guy in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I remember that now. Cucci, yes, keeps getting a mention. Woodgate, a lot of people say that. Yeah, Woodgate was a good defender. I actually named Woodgate in one of my favourite all-time 11s, and then Steve Howie was on the blower, asking why I hadn't put him in. Tim Krul, miss him now. Another good shout. You forget, you've probably gone into this in right depth. Yeah, Tim Krul, really, really good. Marino, wouldn't say he was a great player. Has he gone? He's gone on well. He's gone on to do well as well, hasn't he? Somewhere.
Yeah. Does he play back in Spain again now?
I think he's just won.
I can't remember who for now, but
I think he's just won. I think he's just won Player of the Season somewhere as well. You know, it's incredible to think that that's the case. So we're another week in anyway. Another week begins, and now the players are back in training. Sav, so we're still being linked with Hendricks, and they keep saying it's nearly over the line, but as of yet, the only thing that's happened over the last few days since we last spoke was that Woodman's committed to the club and has now gone out on loan. Are you optimistic we'll see a little bit of business and perhaps see Hendricks come in this week? Whoops, just gone. Samantha, I'll come to you.
Yeah, on, I think he was booked in for the medical, might have gone through it today. I think he's a decent signing. It's not rock and roll, but it's needed for numbers. I don't know where we're going to go in terms of signings. We absolutely will say it every week. We need a number 9. We need to spend all our money on a number 9. Chris Woods is the new name that's came up, and thinking about potentially, the system we're going to play. I think he'd be a good shout. He was fantastic at Leeds. he does a job at Burnley and a different type of football. So you would hope that's the priority. What frustrates me more than anything is our inability to work on more than one deal at a time. I think I don't know what the club's prioritising, and I know that it's a different environment at the minute, and getting the squad back and the COVID testing and all of that is, a lot to kind of juggle. But we really need to be getting another 2 players in probably by the end of next week. The free transfers, I think, are a little bit more difficult because that market's saturated. There's a lot of people looking at them. I know a lot of fans are frustrated that we don't seem to be, or we're not perceived to be making a real push towards Ryan Fraser, for example, who I think would improve our squad. But, there's going to be a lot of teams looking at them and trying to balance their books and make deals. And it means that, the bracket for him in terms of signing on fee and wages, he can almost ask whatever he wants. So I think that's the position we're in, and we're so rigid in terms of our structure that once it goes above that threshold, it's on to the next. So I think it's going to be a last-minute rush again. And I would be surprised if we got more than Hendrick plus 2 or 3 players. I think it'll be difficult, and I think 2 of those will be loans. I would say we'll maybe buy 1 player, and that would be it.
Yeah, I've got to agree. Sav, welcome back. Essentially, same question I asked you before, just about the players. Obviously we're getting linked with various players, and Hendrick's possibly in this week, but not a great deal of business being done so far.
No, sorry, I keep dipping in and out. My dad keeps ringing me, and he knows I'm busy, but that's the only reason why I keep randomly going. Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, Hendrick's supposed to be imminently being announced. He had a medical on Friday or something. But I haven't really seen much else. I saw something over the weekend about us, swapping Richie and Gale in. I think it was for Wilson. I'm not emotionally ready to part with Richie yet, so I wouldn't be very happy about it. And also, I think we need to keep Gale for the moment because we haven't got a decent striker.
Yeah, no, striker as a priority. It's got to be, Kendall, hasn't it? Really, everyone says it who comes on the show.
That's why I was so surprised when obviously we've been linked with Jeff Hendrick and also Chris Smalling in the last few days. I know he'd been offered to the club, but apparently he's not interested in a move to the club, which is fair enough. He's been doing well in Italy. Just if he wants to do that, then let him crack on. But yeah, it surprised me that we were sort of going for a centre back when obviously striker is our main. We are desperate for someone who scores goals because, even if it was someone who wasn't like the best striker in the whole world, but he had Premier League experience and he had goal score guarantees. We've just let Lazaro go. He's signed for Borussia Mönchengladbach today. I'm absolutely devastated. I practically cried when I saw that this morning. Not for footballing reasons, but a bit. But yeah, we're letting players go. We'll end up signing Bentaleb, and I just know we will. Steve will be like, "Oh, we've got imminent signings," and it'll be Bentaleb. And 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 Tom Allen signed a new deal. It'll be something like that, and that's what frustrates me because, as we know, there's a couple of free agents, there's a couple of players who'll be relegated who will be decent. I just want us to do something of merit, something that would make sense instead of just buying who we think because Steve wants English players. Go away. I just don't want Brexit football. I want nice, good football. Just do something good. Honestly, I think it's just, especially when the club's in limbo at the moment as well, when we don't know if there's going to be a takeover, we don't know what the investment's going to be. But regardless of what's happened, we need to do something because we're now 3-4 weeks away from the start of the league again. And obviously, as we know, we can't enter next season with no signings. So I think we desperately need to get something done.
Jonas gets a mention. Yeah, another good name. I saw Colaccini, Tom Dixon mentioned Colaccini, Stefan Givosh for one of the worst and one of the best players. Kevin Nolan, again, another good servant at Newcastle United, and a lot of people will always remember that game against Sunderland, of course. Where do I think we'll go on transfers? I think you're right, girls. I think we'll end up in this position where we get a couple of loans in. Will we get the centre forward we're all craving for? Under this current regime and under the current circumstances, are very much doubted. And I think if we do, it'll be down to good luck. And I think the frustrating thing for me, watching like Mike Ashley's, CEO, if you like, Lee Charnley, is that he seems to do business one deal at a time. It seems like, highly unlikely that when he's working on one deal, he's got his eye on another. He does one deal at a time, and that's why Newcastle United tend to miss out on signings, and it's why any hesitation that's shown, I think we tend to see, players think, well, I'd rather go to somewhere that wants me, and it's that old problem as well, isn't it, Sav, where if a player's put out there for £30 million, you guarantee Newcastle will go in with a bid of 20 and then try and negotiate. And the reason that another club wants £30 million is because that's what the player they think is worth. They don't suddenly go, oh yeah, well, you can have him for 20.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, and that's why, and like the budget sort of this summer, it's nothing. And, it's so frustrating to watch it all the time. And then you think back to like last year, what we paid for Joelinton, and I don't even know anymore. It's just like a joke. You go in every day, you see everyone else signing players, and we're just sort of at a standstill, not really doing anything.
Yeah. Local Hero says sources close to Alan Shearer on Monday night denied any involvement with BNG. Well, there's no great surprise there. But yeah, I mean, have you noticed that, Samantha, when transfer window come round, we always seem to be looking for a deal. I think that maybe stems from when we were, in the European market, and when we're signing a lot of these French players, when we're signing the likes of Kabay, Demba Ba, and etc., we seem to be quite cute at negotiating and buying them for next to nothing, and then selling them on for a profit. Do you think that's where Lee Charnley's got that from? Because he just doesn't seem to go in and try and do the correct thing.
Possibly. I mean, you look at Mike Ashley's businesses, always looking to do a deal. It's been our strategy, and the reason that they give it as a selling point is you want 30, but we'll give you 25 million up front. No staggered payments, no other clauses. We'll give you the cold hard cash. And for some clubs it works. But the market changes year on year, yet our strategy hasn't. And if this guy's supposed to be a savvy businessman, then he should appreciate that. What I think is really interesting when we look at the bids that are going in for the club at the minute, that everybody is saying, well, he wants 350 million, which is ridiculous in the current climate. People are lowballing him, going in with 280, and it's laughable, and they're tire kickers, and they're this and they're that. And you think that's the exact strategy that you use for transfers for Newcastle United. So I think it holds us back. I have absolutely no time at all for Lee Charnley. I'm not a fan of Steve Nixon. We spend months preparing transfers. I don't know what budget we spend on scouting players and finding out everything about them. There's reports of how much work we did checking into Jeff Hendrick for this deal. I mean, come on, it's free transfer. He's played for Burnley in the Premier League for X amount of years. But we put that much work in. So, we miss out on opportunities, as we spoke of, because we feel like maybe we feel like we need to do so much due diligence on all these deals because Mike Ashley didn't do it on the club when he bought it. But it just sets us behind. And I'm not saying that I want this to waste money, but I think we need to take a chance. I think if you've seen a player, if you know a bit about them, if you talk to a few people, you put the bid in, you go in a bit closer to what they want, and you try and get it sealed, especially in the current circumstances where we desperately need certain players in certain areas, because we've been relegated twice and he's had to put his hand in his pocket on those occasions, and those occasions have been his fault. I just feel like we're constantly going around in the same cycle, and we were very lucky last season. We were really, really lucky. We didn't play well. It was a mess. The tactics were a mess. We did have injuries, granted. We didn't buy particularly well, when you weigh it up, even with the loans. We are going in for a carbon copy season, in my eyes, with a little bit more experience behind the team playing together, but with big gaping gaps that we should be going in and getting sorted out straight away. And I would actually say for the striker, we should be overpaying for the one that we want because of what it will bring to the team.
Yeah, good points. Well made, Samantha. Kendall, do you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the problem is now, obviously, I mean, under Rafa, we made some really decent like signings for minimal money. So obviously, Dubravka, Shah, Fernandez, you know, all very low cost, and they've ended up being total like pillars of the team. But unfortunately, now the position that we're in is that we don't have that pull. Rafa Benitez was the pull to the club. You wanted to play under Rafa Benitez. Like, he's a world-class manager. He's won nearly every domestic cup that you can possibly win. And that was the pull. But now, as a club in general, and it's such a shame how far we've fallen, we're not that club anymore where players think, I want to play for Newcastle. Steve Bruce isn't the person that they want to play under. I don't think a player's going to sit there and think, oh, I'd love to play under Steve Bruce. I love his tactics. Like, we don't have that opportunity, and we don't have that over anybody else in the market right now, which is another issue when we're going in for players and we're offering below, because the player's just going to sit there and think, well, I'm going for money and I'm going to play football. I'm not going for what the club is. So that's where the loyalty runs out, because they don't want to play for the club. They haven't got the passion for the shirt. So we're struggling. We're always shopping in the bargain bin, last minute, getting deals over the line 2 days before the window closes. And as you say, working on one deal at a time in this current market when people are doing business day in, day out, when there's certain players, there's a minimal group of players from relegated teams that other teams are hoping to get on, you know, really good deals, and we're not offering good enough money for them. We're trying to get them for 10 million under what they're worth, and it's just like we need to be better. We need to be more proactive, and we need to understand now that it is mostly about game time and money for players who obviously would, you know, if Man United came in for them, they'd want to play for the history of Man United. But as I say, we just haven't got that pull anymore.
Yeah, fair point. Last 10 minutes of the show. FA Cup replays have been scrapped for next season. Do you agree with that, Sav?
Yeah, to an extent. I think that sometimes, you know, but then again, it's like I saw yesterday, someone said, like, for the smaller teams, the revenue that brings in of having a replay, you know, that sort of, you know, that brings money to the club. I mean, I do agree with it, but then I don't on the same hand.
Yeah, Samantha, what's your take on that? I mean, you know, they've got to look at it because we could end up in lockdown again, and I suppose they're looking ahead to potential situations which might arise.
I don't agree. I think it's suited towards the bigger clubs. I don't think it gives an opportunity for the lower clubs. They deserve their payday. My only kind of caveat would be that then all the games are played at the stadium that generates more revenue, especially if it's during COVID, because they need that payday. It would certainly be a problem for us if we didn't have replays, because that's going to put the cup competitions out of our remit straight away, considering the luck of last year. But I was quite vocal on this when it was spoken about previously. As I said, because it's geared towards the bigger clubs, you know, they have tight schedules. It's difficult for them to fit games in. I don't really care. I don't think that's fair. That monopolizes the competitions. You know, there was uproar when Liverpool put their under-23 squad in because they prioritised the World Club Cup. So just do that and just make sure that everybody else has the same opportunity. Don't take it away. It's probably one of the things I'm quite passionate about because I feel like it's going to happen anyway, and I don't think that it's fair for the majority.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think I believe, you know, it's down to COVID and nothing else, and I think we'll see a return to replays, you know, should we get back to some kind of normality. Kendall, what's your view?
Yeah, I'm very similar. I do believe that it is geared towards, you know, the top clubs and the ones who can afford to just play the games there and whatever. I mean, fair enough if you went and said Champions League, Europa League, we're not going to have replays. That's fair enough because most of all of the teams in that are very, obviously they bring in a lot of revenue. They're big clubs, they've got global followings, so that's fair enough. But obviously as the replay, it's the, you know, the excitement of having a big team at a smaller ground. It's the money that it brings in. It's the television money, for example, that you're not going to get anymore. It's going to be just obviously once, and it's going to be harder to show different things on the TV. And obviously, what, as we all know, I mean, sometimes you believe in it, sometimes you don't, but you have an advantage if you play at home. And unfortunately for the smaller teams, when they're already under advantage, I mean, well, not against us because we've lost some like teams like ridiculous over the last few years, but when the smaller teams, they're already getting a disadvantage, sorry, it's going to be tougher for them. So I do think, as you say, it is more to do with COVID, and that genuinely I do hope that they do bring it back for the FA Cup. But for things like the Champions League, I don't mind one match knockouts, because the excitement obviously we saw with Bayern Munich and Barcelona the other night, you don't get games like that when there's replays. So that's fair enough. But the FA Cup, I do think that it definitely needs to be obviously reviewed after we hopefully get into a sense of normality again.
Yeah, just the last point really on war flags as display, Sav. Obviously, they basically walked away from the club when Rafa left, and that was the biggest form of protest yet. But the new flag was well worth the wait, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think they did a brilliant job with that, and the reach that it had around Twitter was brilliant. You know, it needs to be said, and you know, it's just it sent out a message, and it went round, you know, it went round Twitter, and it was brilliant.
Yeah, Samantha, I mean, a great display, wasn't it? Just a pity that they've had to go and do something like that, and of course they did it for free. They managed to get the money together themselves and put it out there. They weren't doing a war flags campaign to get that masterpiece out there.
Yeah, I mean, they're an absolute testament to the club. I was so happy that I saw it. It came out of the blue. You know, I would usually just keep my football talk for Twitter, but I shared it on all my social media, and, you know, a couple of people asked questions about it because, you know, it needed that visibility. It was so, whoever came up with that, the idea, and I think the person that put the design tweeted it, you know, is a genius, because I think in that visual image is everything that we are thinking at the minute. Whether it's right or wrong, that's the perception that we have, and perception can kill you. So the fact that it was there, it was outside the ground. I'm not sure how long it was outside the ground for, but yes, as Sav said, it went all over Twitter, and I think, you know, it was another point of recognition for us as a fan base that, you know, we're not going to let this go until we have better answers that at least kind of satisfy some of the questions, whether we like them or not. This is the perception that we have. And I don't know if there's ever been so much kickoff against the Premier League before, but long may it continue, because, you know, I'm not going to go as far as saying they're corrupt and have not really gone down that path, but things certainly aren't the way that they should be in the Football League or in the Premier League, and I honestly think that they need a massive overhaul.
Yeah, good stuff. Kendall, same to you. Great to see the flags back out there, and a wonderful display by the lads.
Yeah, absolutely, because when war flags, obviously, and Gallagher flags and stuff originally became a thing, it was, you know, a show of unity. All the fans were in agreement. It was immense to go to a game and see the flags float. And I remember when they obviously did the Rafa Benitez one, and it was in Spanish, and like that's still one of my favourite flags that I've ever seen. And it was brilliant. And obviously, again, regardless of what's been going on as fans, we've continue to be at each of them. We've continued to be against each of them. There's been arguing among the fan base, and for the first time in weeks, in months, even the war flags, everyone was like, "That's amazing, that's brilliant," and it just brought the unity back to the fan base again, which is what we need in these times. We need to work together. As I've said, like, imagine what we can achieve together and what we have achieved in the past few weeks. So the flag was just bringing it back home again, showing that really that our end goal is all the same, despite us being at each other's throats half the time, like we always are as Newcastle fans. Like, it's just a show of unity again, and I really appreciated it for that after everything that's gone on the past few weeks.
Yeah, these players are still coming in thick and fast. Lots of great suggestions. Jack Colback Zachary says, must be a show for one of the worst English players that we've ever had. Lots of Pavel Ajordi comments coming in. Jay Graham just basically backing up what a lot of other people have said. Rob S comes out with a classic. Niall Ranger, worst English player. Yeah, I mean, you know,
worst person.
Complete waste of time that guy was at Newcastle. Unity, join NUST, hashtag Be United, says Tom. Thanks for that, mate. Nicholas says, great partner, they need top YouTube content. See, great, all the best, keep the faith. Thanks very much, mate. And yeah, I mean, it's, you know, as always, a great show to have you girls on. And Samantha, I just want to thank you especially for coming up with that tonight. It's certainly going to keep people entertained. And UFC news, Tamuri Ketspire, bad signing Andreas Anderson. You know, people will just go on and on and on with that. Dave Avery says, great show again tonight. Stephen, the girls. And we'll give Derek Sharp, he says, John Anderson was the best free transfer ever. So we'll leave you with a final comment. Thanks very much. Until next week, girls, I will see you then. Thanks very much for coming on.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.